storm howled like a wounded beast, tearing through the ancient forest with a fury I'd never seen before. Rain lashed against my cabin windows, each gust of wind threatening to rip the roof from its foundations. I was just about to call it a night, convinced nothing could survive that tempest, when I heard it. A sound that cut through the roar of the storm. A high-pitched, desperate cry. It wasn't an animal I recognized. It sounded most human. Curiosity, or maybe just foolishness, got the better of me. I grabbed my heavy-duty raincoat and a powerful flashlight, stepping out into the chaos. The wind immediately tried to shove me back inside. Branches snapped and flew through the air like deadly projectiles. I aimed my flashlight beam into the churning darkness, following the sound. It was weaker now, almost swallowed by the storm. I pushed through walls of rain and whipping foliage, my boots sinking into the mud. The cry came again, closer this time, from a small hollow at the base of a giant, uprooted cedar tree. And that's where I saw him. A tiny creature, no bigger than a human toddler, huddled against the cold, wet earth. It was covered in matted, dark fur, soaked and shivering violently. Its eyes, huge and black, were wide with terror. They locked onto me, and the crying stopped, replaced by a trembling silence. My heart hammered in my chest. This wasn't a bear cub or any other animal I knew. The proportions, the face, the sheer intelligence in those eyes. It was a baby Bigfoot, a Sasquatch. The legends were real, and a child of that legend was shivering at my feet. There was no sign of its family. The uprooted tree and the sheer violence of the storm suggested they had been separated. Perhaps tragically, this little one was alone, vulnerable, and wouldn't last the night in these conditions. All the stories I'd ever heard about these creatures raced through my mind. Tales of elusive, powerful beings that avoided humans at all costs, bringing one into my home. It was madness. What if its parents came looking for it? A full-grown Sasquatch was something I did not want to confront. My survival instincts screamed at me to back away, to leave it to its fate, to pretend I'd never seen a thing. But then, the creature let out a soft, whimpering sound. It wasn't a cry of terror anymore, but a plea. It was a sound any parent, human or otherwise, would understand. In that moment, it wasn't a legend or a monster. It was just a lost, scared child. My choice was simple. I couldn't leave it to die. I slowly knelt down, keeping my movements slow and non-threatening. I reached out a hand, speaking in a low, soothing voice. "Hey there, little fella. It's okay. You're safe now." It flinched, but didn't run. Its big, dark eyes watched my every move. I gently scooped it up. It was surprisingly light, all fur and shivering bones. I wrapped it inside my raincoat, shielding it from the wind and rain. It let out another small whimper, but this time, it burrowed closer to my warmth. Walking back to the cabin felt completely different. The storm was still raging, but my world had fundamentally shifted. I was carrying a myth in my arms. Inside, I set the little creature down on a soft rug by the fireplace. I towel-dried its fur as gently as I could. It was still trembling, but its eyes followed me with a dawning sense of curiosity rather than pure fear. I warmed up some milk and offered it in a small bowl. Hesitantly, it lapped it up, its tiny tongue working quickly. For the first time, a sense of calm seemed to settle over it. Its shivering subsided, and after finishing the milk, it curled up on the rug, exhausted, and fell into a deep sleep. I sat in my armchair all night, watching it. The storm eventually passed, leaving behind a world washed clean and eerily silent. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the sleeping form by the fire. He was real. This wasn't a dream. I had a baby Bigfoot sleeping in my living room. I named him Pip, for his small size and squeaky cries. The night had started with a storm, but it had ended with a secret, a responsibility, and the beginning of the most extraordinary friendship I could ever imagine. The next few days were a crash course in caring for a creature that shouldn't exist. Pip was incredibly intelligent. He learned routines quickly, showing a clear understanding of my words and gestures. He was playful, too. We'd played gentle games of chase around the cabin, his little feet pattering on the wooden floors. He had a fascination with shiny objects, especially my keys, and would chortle with the strange, guttural laughter when he managed to snatch them. He was a child, full of innocence and wonder, but the shadow of his family loomed large. Every night, I'd hear sounds from the forest deep, mournful calls that echoed through the valleys. They were looking for him. Pip would hear them too, and a sad, distant look would come into his eyes. He'd stand by the window, peering out into the darkness, letting out a soft, answering call. My heart ached for him, and for his parents. I knew I couldn't keep him forever. He belonged with his own kind. I was just a temporary guardian, a safe harbor in a storm. The decision was agonizing. Part of me wanted to keep him, to protect him from a world that would hunt him, cage him, or dissect him if they ever found out. But I knew that would be selfish. He deserved his family, so I started a new routine. Each evening, as the calls began, I'd take Pip to the edge of the forest. I would wait with him, a silent protector, hoping his family would be brave enough to show themselves. Weeks turned into a month. Our bond deepened. Pip trusted me completely. He would hold my hand with his surprisingly human-like fingers, looking up at me with absolute faith. And then, one evening, it happened. As we stood at the tree line, two massive, shadowy figures emerged from the dense woods. They were a UK Isley, over 8 feet tall, their powerful forms covered in the same dark fur as Pip. They stopped about 50 yards away, their eyes glowing faintly in the twilight. They were his parents. My blood ran cold, but I stood my ground. I gave Pip a gentle nudge forward. He looked back at me, his eyes filled with a heartbreaking mix of joy and sadness. He didn't want to leave me. I knelt down and looked him in the eye. "Go on, Pip," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "It's your family. Go home." He let out one last, soft whimper and ran towards them. His mother scooped him up in a massive arm, holding him close. The father, the huge male, stood and looked directly at me. He didn't move. He just watched me. There was no menace in his gaze, only something else. Acknowledgement. Gratitude. Then, he raised a hand, palm open, in a gesture that was unmistakably a wave. A sign of peace. Then he and his family melted back into the forest, disappearing as silently as they had appeared. I stood there for a long time, the silence of the forest pressing in on me. The cabin felt empty when I returned. The little rug by the fireplace was just a rug again. The silence was no longer peaceful, but lonely. My life went back to normal, but it was a different kind of normal. The world felt bigger, more mysterious, filled with more wonder than I had ever known. Sometimes, on quiet nights, I think I hear a familiar call from deep in the woods, and sometimes I find a small, perfect, shiny rock left on my doorstep. I know who it's from. That violent storm didn't just transform a single night. It transformed my entire life, leaving me with a secret and a friendship that transcended the boundaries of our worlds. Thanks for listening to my story. If you've ever had an experience that changed the way you see the world, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more tales from the wild and unknown. Stay curious.